friends, aloha, and welcome to the big island of Hawaii, or Iceland, or the moon. Either way, we are here to drive this, the 2016 Porsche Boxster Spyder, something way more up my personal alley than all of those big SUVs we've been driving as of late. So let's spend some time going through the changes in a technical review, and I would say we'd start with the engine, but it is not here. So you know what? We will start here, but there are other bits, and we'll work our way back. Okay, you guys need to pay attention, get your notebooks out, because this technical review is going to be different than other technical reviews we've done in the past, and not just because we are not starting with the engine, but when we talk about this car, we need to talk about this car as it relates to two other cars. That is the Boxster GTS we drove back in July, and the Cayman GT4, which we love and dream about. And let's start with the obvious, and that is the front end, which looks like it's been pilfered from a Cayman GT4, and it has, but there is some logic behind it. Now, do you remember the Boxster GTS episode? We talk about that car having 3 radiators. Well, this car and the Cayman GT4 have 3 radiators, hence this opening here. But then notice the sculpting is very different, and there's also this opening here. There is a function to that form, and the function is it provides more downforce over a standard Boxster. And then this opening here provides some function as well. Basically, it acts as an air extractor. Now let's move to the suspension, and this is where I would argue is the biggest change of this car. So in the Cayman GT4, kind of just a recap there, the suspension is literally lifted from a GT3, which means it's been manufactured by Porsche Motorsport, so it has those funky wishbones to it. This car doesn't have that suspension. This car shares the X73 suspension with the Boxster GTS. But unlike the Boxster GTS, this doesn't have PASM. You can't even get it as an option in any of the Spyders. So in just kind of recapping there, a Boxster GTS sits about 10 mils lower than a standard Boxster. So this sits a further 10 mils lower than a Boxster GTS, so a total of 20 mils lower than a standard Boxster. And then there's the brakes. The brakes in a Cayman GT4, they also come from a GT3. These are lifted from the 911 Carrera S. Then there's the wheels. These are specific to the Spyder, so you can only get them on the Spyder. They're offered in 3 finishes. You got the silver here, which I don't love with this color, if I'm really being honest. It's too much silver. Then there's like a gunmetal gray. And then if you really wanted a silver car, there is a black finish, which would look wunderbar here. And with that, we need to press on to the rear. So the interior, there are a number of changes here, but we're going to cover those in the full first drive review episode of this car, so make sure you come back for that. As a preview, silver seatbelts. But back to the exterior, specifically the hindquarters. There are 3 changes going on here. Probably one of the most noticeable is that spoiler in the back. Very like classic Porsche-esque dovetail, ducktail, whatever you want to call it. And then there's this clamshell trunk lid. They have these streamliners here. We're not going to talk about these in this episode, but in the full first drive review episode, we are actually going to put the top down and count the steps. And a hinweis here, it's less than 15. Actually, if you've been following us on Periscope, you'd actually know the answer to this already, but I digress. Anyway, back to the exterior. So we've got this here. Now in a Cayman GT4, this has an air blade, which provides kind of like a ram air. Very exciting for us old Pontiac guys here. But this is the same as the Boxster GTS. Then the rear wheel here. Yes, it's the same kind of design as the front, but one thing that didn't make the trip from the Cayman GT4 was the wheel sizing. So in that car, it actually has physically wider wheels and tires, and the tires themselves are the Cup 2s. This one doesn't have that. But what did make the trip from the Cayman GT4 is uprated drive shafts, the clutch, and the slave cylinder. And while we bring those up, take a wild guess, the one and only transmission that is on offer in the Boxster Spyder. The hinweis is the number 3 has something to do with it. And can I just say, vielen Dank, Stuttgart. Anyway, back to something else I'm very excited about, and it's kind of a riddle. What does this have in common with the outgoing 911 Carrera S, actually besides the brakes? And that would be the engine. It is a flat 6, 3.8 liter. puts out 375 horsepower, comes in at 6,750 RPM, and 309 pound-feet of torque, which comes in at, yes, a very high 4,750 RPM, stays flat all the way to 6,000 RPM. Now, there are two things going on there. Number one, that's 36 pound-feet more torque than in a Boxster GTS. That's quite a bit. And number two, the general idea of Boxster engines, whether it be a 4 or 6, they actually don't produce torque at a low point. It's just something inherent in their design. And again, if you had been following us on Instagram, you would have seen the picture of the first ever Boxster engine. And I actually shared with you who invented it, and it's not who you think. But again, I digress. A couple other things that are different here. The sport exhaust is fitted as standard on all Spyders, and Porsche torque vectoring is fitted as standard on all Porsche Boxster Spyders. Now, that's about everything mechanical here. Yeah, there's more stuff which we'll cover in the full first drive review episode, but let's put this all together, and I need to leave you guys with a question. What we did here wasn't so much a tech review as it was a tech review where we charted 3 cars side by side to point out their similarities and dissimilarities, and we did this for a very specific reason. If you notice, normally on the show I never really talk about the prices of these cars, and I do that for a reason. I, for one, am a very big believer in that you don't drive a price or a payment, you drive a car, so you should be excited about what you drive no matter what your budget is. So my job is to geek out about like engineering, design, driving dynamics, silver seat belts, that kind of stuff. But in this case, we do need to talk about price. So basically, the price of entry, $82,000 US. Now that is significantly more than a base Boxster, and it is more than a Boxster GTS. But take a look at what we just did. We went through the laundry list of changes from like Porsche Motorsports, from different like 911s, I mean, things that normally don't end up in Boxsters. So I would argue we have an incredibly different car here. Now, if you remember in the Boxster GTS episode, I asked you the question of what would you choose? Well, I'm not gonna ask that question of you today. What I'm gonna ask is, what does this car compete with? Because now it is a lot more money and has a lot of special bits in there. So the specific question is, what do you feel this car competes with? And don't just tell me what you think it competes with. Let me know what you think it competes with, why you think it competes with that specific car, and what region of the world you hail from. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I'm gonna leave you with two things. Number one, make sure you download our very fancy, very new whiz-bang mobile application that I helped personally design. You can get it for free from Apple iTunes and Google Play, depending on whatever system you're on. And number two, we're going to come to you with a full first drive review episode of this car from the moon.